Puritam Kalmashapaham Shravanamangalam Srimadatam Bhavigranantiye Bhurida Janaha. So today we'll continue the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, the class on the Gospel, talk on the discussion on the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. And the incident that we were discussing was in November 1884. It took place November 1884, and Sri Ramakrishna is with his devotees in Dakshineshwar. And you all know that there was a character, Hajra, who used to be, Thakur used to call him Hajra Mahashay. And he used to sit and try to talk with the devotees who were trying to visit Sri Ramakrishna and ask some questions. And he used to confuse them with his strange logic. So Sri Ramakrishna sometimes used to get irritated, but he somehow tolerated him because he had fantastic ideas. You know, Hajra had a big family and he had several children, and he was not very keen to earn money. So he developed a sort of, you may say, disgust for worldly life. Apparently it was Vairagya, but it was not Vairagya. He just wanted to avoid the problems that one has to face in worldly life. Otherwise, with the family and children, you're not expected to renounce the world. So he gave up everything and came and started staying in Dakshineshwar. So it was some sort of escapism. And unfortunately, the parents of his in-laws, they were supporting his wife and children. They had to do it. There was no other way. And he was sitting here and talking about renunciation and giving up worldly pursuits just because he could not earn money and support his family. So Sri Ramakrishna was not very happy. He said, see, you have a family, you have your children, and you talk about Vairagya and start doing spiritual practice. At least act as if you are a holy person. This is hypocrisy. You have to go back, and who will look after your family? That is your responsibility. So he knew Hajra's renunciation was, he was disguising his incapacity to look after his family and the worldly matters as renunciation. So he's saying, he's telling the devotees who had assembled there, giving the example of Hajra. Obviously, Hajra was not there. But he used to live in Dakshineshwar and live on alms because everything was for monks and other people who lived there in the Dakshineshwar campus. You got free food and everything, all provisions and other things were there. So he used to imitate as if he has given up the world and he was living on alms there. Then one of the disciples, or maybe one of the devotees who came there, had a question to ask. Perhaps he was a Brahmo devotee, and he also was a man with a family. So he said, why don't I develop some kind of dispassion which will enable me to practice, do spiritual practices, enjoy solitude, and do some kind of spiritual practices. So Sri Ramakrishna is now answering him. So I'll just read what he says. You ask me why you don't develop deep dispassion. There is a reason for it. You have a strong desire for sense enjoyments. Your mind is filled with pravruti. So there are two things in Sanskrit. There's a word known as pravruti and there's another word known as nivruti. Pravruti means, literally it means going towards. And nivruti means going away from. So anything that makes you gather things around yourself. The more pravruti you have, the more things you'll gather around yourself. You'll have more possessions, more desires. And so that is known as pravrutti marga. So when you say pravrutti, that means gathering things towards you, all the material things. You're not satisfied with little. You want more and more things. You want to accumulate more and more things, more and more money, more and more property. So you're not satisfied. So that is known as pravrutti, gathering things around yourself. Nivrutti is exactly opposite. It is like centripetal and centrifugal force. Centrifugal force takes things away from you. So you follow another path, the path of nivrutti, which is going away from. So where you reduce your dependence on you're satisfied with few things. So Mahatma Gandhi once famously said, there is enough in this world. Somebody was speaking of economics and saying that the world population is growing and the resources are getting fewer and fewer. So how will people survive? So Mahatma Gandhi once seems to have remarked that there is enough in this world for one's need, but there is not enough for one's greed. So what it means is, if our needs are to be satisfied, we can live on very little. Even if you have a big palace with a big house with 10 rooms, and if you are alone, you are going to just stay in one of the rooms, or maybe 2, 3 rooms you'll use at the most. You don't really need a big house. Similarly, no matter how many food items you gather around you, your constitution, your health, your stomach will allow you to eat and digest only a limited quantity. So there is enough in this world, as Gandhi said, for man's needs, but not enough for his greed. Greed will force him to gather more and more things around himself. He's not satisfied with the things that he already has. There's no contentment. That is why Sri Ma Sharda Devi says there is the greatest amongst all the virtues is contentment. Santosha, that is the word. Santosha means you are content with whatever comes to your share, to your lot. So here he said, I said the same to Hajra. Hajra, of course, was attracted to Dakshineshwar because he knew a lot of rich people visited the temple in Dakshineshwar, like Mathur Babu, and perhaps he was making a show of meditation and with a bead around his neck, a necklace of beads around his neck and a mala in his hand, and used to imitate as if he's doing great sadhana, he has given up the world with the intention of getting some money, some donation, some charity, and then perhaps that was his motive. But in any case, he was a very intelligent person, so he could logically convince people who are coming that he is great. And that created a lot of confusion because people are sometimes very much impressed by the way you convey ideas to them. And he was a very good in that respect, that he knew how to talk and how to convince people who are coming to get something from Sri Ramakrishna or the holy atmosphere in Dakshineshwar. So very often he would sit near the gate, and only people who were very keen to go in would find their way in. Otherwise, he would stop them. And Sri Ramakrishna knew that. But then he didn't stop him because he thought it's mother's will, because no matter how much he pointed out to him, Hajra would not listen. So this Hajra, once he said, I told the same thing to Hajra. He knew Hajra was following the pravrutti marga. He wanted some wealth, he wanted prosperity, but he was acting as if he was fond of nivrutti, fond of renunciation. So he said, I told the same thing to Hajra. He's addressing this Brahmo devotee now, Sri Ramakrishna. He said, in the countryside, in the Bengal countryside, if you see, before they bring water to the fields, they make mud ridges on all the 4 sides of the field so that the water will not flow out. It can't flow out. So that's one way of preventing the water from spreading so that they want to retain the water in their fields. So that's why they build this, they construct these mud ridges all around the fields. But they have water outlets here and there. And there are holes which have been dug by rats. No matter, the water is brought out with full force to the field, but unfortunately, these rat holes and the small gaps in the ridges, even though the whole field is surrounded by these ridges, which are supposed to prevent the water from flowing out, most of the water that is allowed to flow in either enters these rat holes or the water outlets that have been formed in these near the ridges in the corner and other places. So water is brought with full force to the field, but it goes out through the holes, either the rat holes or the breaks in the ridges. Our desires are like these holes. So he's saying, if you have more desires, no matter how much of sadhana or how much of upasana you do, all the energy or all the spiritual energy that you gather is wasted through these rat holes. Your desires are like your holes, like these holes, rat holes, these outlets. You may be practicing a lot of japa. He was pointing to Hajra because he was always seen to be counting his beads, and people thought he was such a holy man. Whenever they came, he used to sit and sometimes just keep watching who is coming, whom to approach. And in his mind, I think a lot of things were going on, except taking the name of the Lord. He was not he was a hypocritical person. So he had a lot of desires, obviously. With those desires, he has come to Dakshineshwar. So he says, you may be practicing japa and repetition of the God's name and all the austerities externally, but at the back of your mind, you have the desire for sense enjoyments. And from these outlets of desires, all the spiritual energy leaks out. Then he gives another example. In rural Bengal, they have a peculiar way of catching fish. They have a device known as bamboo trap. So that is like a wall which allows the blood to flow. If you see, we have a wall which allows the blood to flow only in one direction. Once it has flown, it cannot reverse. So similarly, there is a bamboo trap where the fishes are allowed to come in, but once they come in, they are not allowed, they can't escape. So ordinarily, the bamboo is straight, but when bent to the ground, it acts like a fish trap. So desire for sense enjoyments is the fish. So the mind remains bent towards the world. If there is no desire, the mind naturally orients upward towards the Lord. Then he gives another example. So if you see the gospel, Sri Ramakrishna does not believe in complex philosophical discussions. He goes directly to the point. And as I mentioned yesterday, we see Sri Ramakrishna, Swami Vivekananda made a wonderful, insightful remark on Sri Ramakrishna's education. For most of us, we know that he never went to school, or even if he went to school, it ended after his primary education was over. And he says, for him, education was a totally different thing than what we understand by education. He says, unfortunately, we had a formal education. We went to the universities, and that university education gave us second-hand knowledge. We learned the thoughts of others, and we were taught to remember those things and express it in the examination. So Swami Vivekananda used to believe that the system that was introduced by Macaulay and the examination system, which unfortunately is what is being practiced everywhere now, education system is more of it's an examination system where your skills and knowledge or information that you have is examined. very often real educational the educational system that we have fails to test your the real education that you have gathered. By real education, I mean the capacity to explore your own human possibilities, not just analytical or intellectual possibilities. There are other possibilities, emotional possibilities. There are other fine arts and many other things, talents a person can have. Then there are spiritual possibilities. So human possibilities, if we are able to explore all, and then the system, if it is designed in such a way that one become a uh, multifaceted personality, all aspects of his personality, the emotional side, the intellectual side, the physical side, obviously physical side, we take a lot of care for physical development. So all these possibilities, if you try to explore, then you find that modern education, though it satisfies some, it explores some possibilities. It teaches you to think analytically, it teaches you to gather information, present it, develop your skills, develop your skills which help you to earn a living. All those things it does, but it does not. I mean, the system itself does not help you to have a complete education, and that education, according to Swami Vivekananda, Sri Ramakrishna learned from nature. So he says he went to the University of Nature, which believed in acquiring knowledge directly in an intuitive fashion, not by just reproducing what others have thought. So he felt guilty. He says, my university education was, I found, so foolish in front of my master that all the education that I had was second-hand education. I just reproduced what the people before me had thought, and I thought I was a very intelligent person. But Sri Ramakrishna, on the other hand, was highly original in his approach towards education. And whatever he saw, whatever, he did not take it for granted as a true scientist would do. He explored all the possibilities, human possibilities, the spiritual possibilities. So if something was proposed to him, whether it is from the scriptures or whether it is from any other field of knowledge, he would not be satisfied till he experienced that truth in his own life, verified it in his own life. So whatever he saw outside, he gave examples from whatever he saw. He didn't borrow these ideas from others. Now everybody sees this bamboo trap, or then he gives another example, which is such a wonderful way of living in communion with nature and learning one's lessons of life from nature. That is, according to Vivekananda, original education. He was original because he could interpret nature and apply it to his own life. He says, he gives another example. Everybody sees there's this scale where you measure things. And there are two needles. Everybody sees that. It's a very common thing in the market in those days. If you wanted to buy anything, you go to any market, everybody would have a scale. So there are two needles. Even by seeing that, he learned some great wisdom by how the scales operate. It's obviously a very simple device, which has been used for centuries. But nobody gave this example to explain the techniques of meditation. He says, do you know how, just like the needles of a scale, because of the weight of lust and greed, the upper needle does not align itself with the lower needle. That means if you want balance in life, the one of the scales should not be loaded with things. I mean, that pravrutti marga, the desire or greed to have more and more, is like one scale. It tips the scale on one side. Thus, one strays from the path of yoga. Yoga means, according to him, this beautiful example that he has given, it's a very original way or original method of conveying the highest philosophical truths in the simplest way. Like all the prophets before him, even Jesus taught through parables. If you see Buddha, he spoke of stories. Most of the Buddha's teachings or Jesus' parables, if you see, so many parables. If you see, if you compile the teachings of these great prophets, you'll find they use the simplest examples and they spoke figuratively from the day-to-day examples, the examples that they saw around them. So here he saw a needle, maybe in those days they were using those scales. So he just tried to connect it with our own mind. You see, like the needle of a scale, if there is no proper balance in our life, if the weight of lust and greed is more, the two needles of the scale they don't align themselves in a straight line, and that is why there is no yoga in our life. Yoga means, if you see the definition of yoga as it appears in the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna says samatvam yoga uchyate. He defines yoga as equanimity. What is this equanimity? That there is balance in your life. That you are not one-sided. You are all inclusive in your approach to life. You're not exclusive or not, aligning yourself towards one thing at the cost of other. So the needle should balance, and that is what he says. Have you not seen? Then he gives another example. This, of course, is there in the Bhagavad Gita again, but still he gives this example. Haven't you seen the flame of a lamp? If there is a puff of air, it flickers. And the state of yoga is like the flame of a lamp where there is no wind. So in a windless place, that these are the examples which you will find in other scriptures as well. In Gita, Sri Krishna says that just as the unflickering flame of a lamp in a windless place, if there is no wind, no wind of desire, if these things or desires give rise to thoughts, expectations, anxieties, they are because of uncertainty. So the moment creation starts, that's the role of Prakriti. The moment they say Prakriti starts its manifestation, the more gross it becomes, there is more uncertainty. So according to the Sankhya philosophy, Purusha as the witness is the one thing that is stable in our life. All other things are changing. So that is why we do all these pujas, we worship Shakti, so that Shakti does not show us the her negative aspect. Prakriti has two aspects, the positive and negative. One which takes you towards Pravritti Marga, another which takes you towards Nivritti Marga. Both the Shaktis or both these powers are powers of nature. One side it can destroy, another side it can create. So similarly, here he says, the windless place, if you balance, in Prakriti there is imbalance, because we have in fact a nice session on 19th, Thursday, where the concept of the three gunas, there's a retreat where in the first session from 3 to 4, as we have announced on WhatsApp and on our website, you can just check. Swami Medhananji is coming from Heidelberg, and he will be there only for one day, that is Thursday. So I asked him, and he suggested these two topics. One was meditation, that is mindfulness in Vedanta. Normally people think of mindfulness or mindfulness meditation is a Buddhist tradition, but there is Vedantic mindfulness. So that will be the first talk. The second talk will be the power of gunas, the three gunas which describe Prakriti. The whole of Prakriti is made of Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. Sattva is the balancing, what Sri Ramakrishna refers to here, that the lower needle aligning itself with the higher needle, that balance is known as Sattva. Tamas and Rajas are, Tamas is attracting and Rajas is dissipating. I mean, these are the two forces, and sattva is the balance. So anyway, the yoga is trying to maintain, first attain to the quality of sattva in one's life. So in nature also you'll find tamas is the destructive force, rajas is the creative force, but there should be a balance. So yoga means samatvam yoga uchyate, as Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, that attaining of this equanimity, the pairs of opposites, the uncertainty that approaches every human being, anxieties, worries, because of uncertainties. Uncertainties are because of these gunas. Gunas by their very nature is transformative in nature, and anything that transforms, anything that changes causes uncertainty in our life. The only thing that takes you towards certainty is this sattvic attitude. So that is compared to the flame of a lamp, which can be meditated upon in a windless place. If there is wind, the flame will flicker. So this is the second example he gives. Like first he gives the example of the scale, where one of the sides, one of the scale is tipped to one side because of the weight of lust and greed. Then he says, he comes to the mind now. Our mind is spread out in different directions. He's explaining why this idea, or why these things are not why one person cannot develop dispassion or have some kind of peace within himself to be able to meditate. Everybody wants to meditate, everybody wants to practice spirituality, but the mind is restless. So what is the cause of restlessness of mind? Why don't we have this dispassion and the mind becomes, why doesn't the mind become quiet? So Sri Ramakrishna gives a direct example. Now our mind is spread out in different directions. A part of it has reached Dhaka, a part of it might have reached Delhi, and another part might have reached Kuch Bihar. These are the three places. Those who stay in Bengal, they know these places. You have to collect this mind, and this mind which is running after these different places. It's just the different locations that drag the mind to these different, makes the mind disturbed. So you have to collect that mind, which is known as pratyahara, withdrawal, and concentrate it to a point. So from pratyahara in yoga, we come to dharana. Dharana means, before we do dharana, first we have to gather back the scattered mind. The mind is scattered because it's being pulled in different directions by the different senses. So you take up any system of yoga, any system of meditation, whether it is Buddhist meditation or whether it is Vedantic meditation or any kind of, there are thousands of techniques of meditation, but they all agree upon one point, that the mind, the vrittis or the waves or the thoughts have to be reduced. There's no other way than withdrawing this mind and concentrating it to a particular point. That is known as dharana. Even before we do dhyana or meditation, which is a far cry for most of us, because withdrawal of the mind, pratyahara, and especially when you are in solitude, if one thinks that just going to solitude will solve the problem. Maybe we will not be physically encountering different, but the mind is so restless that even in the midst of solitude, it has the capacity to branch out to different places. So he says, now he gives another example. If you want a cloth worth 16 annas, that is, in those days, 1 anna, that is 6p, 1 anna was 6p. So 16 annas constituted 1 rupee. That is how they had the multiples of 16. So 16 annas means 1 full rupee in those days. Now it is 100 paise per rupee. So you have to pay this amount to the cloth merchant. If there is a slight obstacle, yoga is not possible. Then he gives another example. I don't know how familiar he was with telegraph, because that was the only way of communication. They used to send telegrams. And he perhaps had access to, or maybe he had seen how the telegraph works. As it was a scientific age, these discoveries were being made. Obviously, telephone was not there, but telegraph was definitely there. They used to send out codes. So he knew that he might have inquired and seen that the telegraph wire communicates signals. So he says that if the telegraph wire is broken, even if the break is very small, it will not convey your message. So similarly, they say when you meditate, the spinal cord also, when we meditate, what does Kundalini mean? Kundalini means unobstructed flow of nervous energy through our spinal column, not through the two strands of the the spinal nerve. It's not that. It has to pass through the hollow. So if you see physiologically also, the Ida and Pingala, the two spinal cord is, if you efferent and efferent nerves are there. But if you just see, if you take a cross section of the spinal cord, there is a small hollow. So biologically, obviously, there is some cerebrospinal fluid in that. So people don't take it very seriously. They think it is just a protective thing, which enables to avoid damage to the spinal nerves. It's floating in cerebrospinal fluid. That is the biological function. Everybody agrees. Nobody denies that. But the nervous energy, which enables us to interact with the world outside, right from the brain up to the base of the spine, the spinal cord, which is such an important organ in our body, especially when it comes to transmission of nervous energy is concerned. It is very important that by some chance, if the spinal cord is broken or even damaged, you know what problems are created. You might be paralyzed if there is an accident. So ordinarily, if you see a slight damage in the transmission of any energy, whether it is through a wire or whether it is through the spinal cord. Through the wire, it may be electrical energy, it may be electrical signals, electromagnetic signals, which do not transmit if there is a break. But then, just as we discovered wireless, even wireless, there is a medium, the signals cannot go. If there is some obstruction, even wireless fails. But it is something similar to the wireless. The hollow of the spinal cord, if one through sadhana, through spiritual practices, one can make the nervous energy flow through this sushumna, which is the central canalis or the central hollow canal, then the yogis found that no matter, we are not dependent on the spinal cord for transmission of our nerve. You enter a different stage or state of consciousness. That is what is known as Kundalini. Kundalini is nothing or secret or any sort of thing. Kundalini is a very simple term which just means that by some technique, by regular spiritual practice, if we are able to make our nervous energy, and which includes the mental energy. Thought energy is a product of nervous energy. You can experiment with that. If you don't eat, or if your spinal cord is damaged, then even it affects your thought, it affects your brain. It indirectly affects your mind also. So if we can make it independent of the spinal nervous system, the nervous system, it does not depend on wires. Just as wireless does not depend on wires, even if the wire is broken, the signals will not be transmitted. Similarly, in wireless transmission, you don't need any medium. So that is how the spiritual energy, we go from lower to higher consciousness. by the rise of Kundalini. That is, Kundalini is nothing but the nervous energy which flows without the need to flow through a medium. It is passing through the Sushumna or the hollow canal. So that is why he says, if the but for ordinary communication, if the telegraph wire is broken, howsoever small the break may be, it will not convey your message. So he's giving this, the breaks here mean that there are so many, just as the water does not flow in the field, because the holes are draining them. So also these desires, they act as speed breakers. The flow of the harmony or the balance that we need in life to survive, that is broken because of our anxieties, our desire born anxieties. Desires give rise to anxieties when they are not fulfilled. So there is lot of speculation, uncertainty, which leads to so many mental problems, or like depression, anxiety, worry, and all those things. That is because we do not follow, we follow the pravritti marga, and that, but unfortunately, we don't get what we really deserve or what we desire because of these leaks. So then he is continuing to tell this person who is obviously staying in a household. So, but at the same time, he has a desire for dispassion and a little bit of renunciation so that he can focus on his spiritual life. But Sri Ramakrishna is consoling. So he says, you are living a householder's life. What harm is there in that? But there is a condition. He says it doesn't mind whether you are a householder or living in a monastery, but one has to surrender the fruit of one's actions completely to the Lord. One must not expect any reward whatsoever. That is the principle of Karma Yoga. So you have to employ the tamas of bhakti. Now he comes to, we normally think that sattva, rajas and tamas is to be avoided. But for some reason, if tamas doesn't go away from us, we cannot be 100% sattvic. Our very constitution is such that we are born with a certain amount of tamas, born with a certain amount of lethargy, laziness. We are also born with a certain amount of rajas, the quality that makes us active, dynamic, and do this, do that. And we are also having, as a part of our nature, a little bit of sattva, which at times motivates us to just go away from all this bustle and din of the world and just sit quietly in solitude. That is another aspect. So it's not that a person is absolutely insensitive. He will never be 100% tamasic or full of tamas, always lazy. He'll never be like that. There'll be little rajas to do something or the other. Or he will never be fully rajasic. Even the busiest person wants some peace, some solitude, some balance in his life. He yearns for that, though he may not know how to find it. And he will perhaps go and take a break, or maybe he just wants, he doesn't know how to get that peace because the rajas is overpowering him or the tamas is overpowering him. So even if these qualities are present, Sri Ramakrishna says, doesn't matter. If you turn these qualities, if you have tamas, you turn it towards God and then it will be transformed. If you have rajas, you turn it towards God, that will be transformed. And if you have sattva, obviously it will help you to meditate. So he says, sometimes he's telling these worldly people, because they, by being in contact with the world, the necessities of the world have forced them to be tamasic and rajasic. It's not that they want to become that, but the very demands of a householder's life. There will be children, the moment you go home, children will be pulling you. There's nothing, very little one can do. That's why one of his disciples, Purna Chandra, though he was married and had a family, used to now and then come and complain. So Sri Ramakrishna used to console him. Even Master Masher, the one who compiled this gospel, he had so many issues at home. A crazy wife who would always be high-strung, and a lot of issues, quarrels with his brothers, and there was joint family. So he took the first opportunity to escape from his own home and come to Dakshineshwar and spend some peaceful life. But that doesn't mean that tamas or rajas is bad. That might have forced one to lead a householder's life. He says you have to employ the tamas of bhakti. Even bhakti can be sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic. If you have tamas, then use that tamas to force your demands on mother. Tell her that this is the state in which you have put me. So there is a beautiful song of Ram Prasad, who is a famous Bengali devotee of the Divine Mother. So that Ram Prasad says, because he was in the legal profession, he was also an accountant, he worked in a firm, but he was a great devotee, and in his office hours or even when he was working, he used to write. He was a devotee of the Mother, Divine Mother. He used to write wonderful poems on Mother Kali, Shama, as he used to call her. And he became a famous saint. So Sri Ramakrishna often loved to sing his songs. So you see this person, Ram Prasad, whose songs are very famous. They are sung in a typical Ram Prasadi style. So he says he uses all the gunas in his songs, which a human being has. Obviously, Ram Prasad himself possessed tamas, possessed rajas. So how he approached the Divine Mother through tamas? He says, he gives a beautiful, the only two lines are there. This is a big song, song of Ram Prasad composition. But the two lines that Sri Ramakrishna sang here in the gospel is, the lawsuit between the mother and son shall gain great momentum. So he is now angry on the Divine Mother. So he talks of a lawsuit. Now, lawsuit, because he was a legal, he talks in a legal language. So you can expect how a son can fight with the mother and even go to the court. So he says, now the lawsuit has started. Means he's angry on mother that you have placed me in these circumstances. Now you should rescue me. So he says, I'm going to file a lawsuit. So even that is allowed. This is known as tamas of bhakti. Bhakti is not always sattvic. Sometimes when you are angry, it's better to be angry on the Divine Mother than to be angry on your people, because they will react and they'll cause you harm. So anything that you possess, if you direct it to the Lord, it gets transformed. You direct it to the Divine Mother in this case, or Vishnu or any other God. So he says, Ram Prasad is terribly upset. He says, I'm going to the court. The lawsuit between the mother and the son shall gain great momentum. I'll see that I'll file a lawsuit. I shall only lie restfully when the mother, having pardoned me, raises me in her arms. It's like demanding justice. He says, I'll find a lawsuit and I will demand justice from you, and till you pardon me, I'm not going to leave the court. I'm not going to withdraw this case. So this is an example of how your anger or anger of tamas, or these qualities which you are, if one unfortunately has, even they can be used to, if they are directed towards the Divine Mother or any Ishta that you worship. So Trailokya, then he is quoting one famous singer, Trailokyanath Sanyal, who used to visit Dakshineshwar often. So he said, Trailokya once said, as I have taken birth in her family, I mean, he is considering the Divine Mother as his own mother. So that means I am her child. So if I have taken birth in her family, I have a right to her property. Now, property is not the property that we normally think of. It's not some material property. Whatever powers, whatever blessings, whatever grace the Divine Mother can bestow upon others, she has to bestow upon me because I belong to her. I belong to that family. So that's the attitude with which they approached God. He says, I say, you have your own mother. She is no artificial mother. She is not even a godmother. I mean, Sri Ramakrishna is now telling. This is what Trailokya said. So what he said is right. The Divine Mother is your own mother. Not that she is an artificial mother whom you cannot see. You have to consider her to be your own mother, not even a godmother, one who takes care of you when your mother dies. Whom can you force if not her? She is the only one whom you can force. If you try to force others, they may not respond, or they may just ignore you. But you can approach your mother, because the mother always responds to the child. And then he says, there is another song which Sri Ramakrishna is quoting. Mother, I am a prematurely born child of weak constitution. Normally, if a child is born if prematurely born, then the health of that child is suspect. Very often, the child suffers a lot. So he says, he addresses the Divine Mother and says that perhaps I am a prematurely born child of yours. Others are good, others have so many good qualities, but you have, I have been born with prematurely, so naturally I have so many deficiencies and I have a weak constitution. But I am not afraid of your red, angry eyes. Don't get angry on me, because after all, I am your child. So it is your duty to protect me. So that's why the poet says, I'm not afraid of your angry eyes. Maybe I make mistakes and you get angry, but then you cannot afford to get angry, because I am your child. This time I am going to file a suit in the court of Shiva, Srinath, that is Shiva, and I will be awarded the decree on just one point. And this is the point I am going to tell Shiva, that she gave birth to me. I am a prematurely born child of the Divine Mother, and she is giving me trouble. She is not taking care of me. So I'll go with this complaint to Shiva, and I will be awarded a decree. That is, I'll be awarded a favorable judgment on this one point. So being a lawyer, this Ram Prasad, or maybe had some training in law, accountancy and other things, he spoke in that language. But the spirit is more important. He must be using these legal terms, but then he's conveying some point that you have to force your demands on the mother, as you would go to the court and force whatever is rightfully belongs to you, whatever rightfully belongs to you, you fight for it. You employ a lawyer, you go file a suit and expect the judge to reward you. So he's telling Shiva will definitely listen to my plea and he will award the judgment in my favor, because I will tell these things, that my mother has not ignored me, she has not taken care of me. Then Sri Ramakrishna says something very significant. She is your own mother. You have to compel her. If you are a part of someone, you are also attracted by him. Because I am a part of the Divine Mother, that is what one is supposed to meditate. We are part of God. We are not somebody who are separated. That idea of separation should go. So if we are part of the Divine, then you have to compel, because I am your part, you cannot ignore me. She attracts me. The Divine Mother attracts me. He who is a genuine worshipper of Shiva receives a portion of the Shiva quality. Because if you always remember your connection with the Lord, then definitely some of the glories of the Lord have to come to you. You receive a portion of his glories. Some of Shiva's characteristics enter into him. He who is a genuine Vaishnava, so he's giving example, no matter which god you worship, is endowed with some of the elements of Narayana, because they worship Narayana, the Vishnu. They worship Vishnu. Besides, he's saying, referring to the devotee, perhaps he is a Vaishnava, you have no worldly duties now, means he is perhaps retired. Luckily, he is retired, he has no obligations. Maybe sons have settled, sons, daughters all have settled. So he ought to practice Vanaprastha. He has to retire. So he says, you are lucky that you have no worldly duties now. Whatever duties you had, You have fulfilled them. Now you don't bother. Don't run after your grandchildren. Your children are capable of looking after their own children. So you should now withdraw. And since you don't have any worldly duties, he's again pointing it out to him. Take to meditation for some days. You have seen, means he's an intelligent devotee, that there is no real substance in the world. And then Thakur supports his statement by a beautiful song. He says, "Oh my mind," this is a wonderful Bengali song. Just think about it. Nobody really belongs to anyone in this world. So this is a song, wonderful song, Bengali song, which says that, oh my mind, just think. The poet is telling the sadhaka, you have to tell your mind that nobody belongs to you. You may be incidentally connected to these people, but they are not yours. They are not really yours. They all belong to God. There is mere illusion in this world. But don't forget Dakshina Mother Kali, Dakshina Kali. Kali or any divine mother or the Ishta that you worship, don't forget, by getting ensnared in her Maya. That means Sri Ramakrishna is to say that when Purusha or Shiva becomes Shakti, Purusha becomes Prakriti. When she creates, along with that, suffering comes, because there is a Vidya Maya and Avidya Maya. One is the Pravritti Marga, another is the Nivritti Marga. You go back to the source from where you came, then you are going against the process of creation. But if you go with the process of creation, you create more assets, more wealth, more things, then you are actually following the Pravritti Marga. Nothing wrong till everything goes fine. But a time will come when the same mother who gave you all these things will take away all these things from you. And then you will be forced to go to Nivritti. So the path of renunciation. So they say it is, why not learn the lesson and not get too much involved in Pravritti. That's why he's saying, don't get involved. You don't have any worldly duties. Don't add your more worldly duties to your life. Go into solitude, do some meditation. And you see that there is no real substance. After all, whatever you do, you have to leave those things behind. So he says, don't forget Dakshina Kali, because it is her Avidya Maya that will make you go away from her. But if you hold on to her, the same Shakti will help you to realize Shiva. It is just for 2 or 3 days. That means do char din, like for a few days, people will call you their master, Lord the master. I mean, if somebody is employed under somebody, so for a few days, the few days means for a limited period, you will be known as the boss, you will be known as the master. Then they will cease to call you the master when the master in the form of death arrives. So he's using the pun on the word master. Now you are the master of some people whom you are leading or whose boss you are. But remember, when the real master comes, the master of death, then nobody will call you. Nobody will call a dead body their master. As long as you are alive, as long as you have power, people will respect you. That is what he says. Just for 2-3 days, they will call you the Lord, the Master. But when the real Lord of death comes, then they will cease to call you the Master. Just think about it. Ram Prasad is telling his own mind. Oh, my mind, just think about it. They will just think about it. Will your friends and relatives accompany you when you are dying? When you are about to die, how many of them will come and join you? Maybe they'll join you when you go for an outing or a picnic or a party, when there is fun. But when you are dying, you die alone. So he says, just think, oh my mind, just think of these things. These are serious things one has to think. Will your friends and relatives accompany you when you are dying? This beloved wife of yours will sprinkle Ganges water on you to evade evil. Suppose you die tomorrow, the first thing that even your wife will do is to see how the body can be disposed. And she says, because that is the tradition in India, You sprinkle Ganges water when something defiles the place, your home. So the same home where your husband lived, he's saying your own wife, the beloved wife, the day you die, she will say, now we have to dispose this body. And when the body is taken away, according to the Indian custom, they would sprinkle Ganges water. Oh, a dead body was here. So it's not a good sign. Some evil will befall us. So this beloved wife of yours will sprinkle Ganges water on you to evade evil. Then after this, after giving this wonderful time, after this dialogue, he knows that the person who has come here now has a lot of ambitions in life. So till now he was creating a atmosphere of vairagya in this person. He's a good person, otherwise he would not have come to Dakshineshwar. And he's really asking a question. He's a great devotee, obviously. With so many things in mind, he has come to Thakur. So Thakur is very patient. Sri Ramakrishna is very patient and telling him why dispassion doesn't come in his life. And then he ends by saying, by quoting a song, which he wants to emphasize this fact before giving him further advice. He says, oh my mind, just think about it. Nobody really belongs to anyone in this world. This is merely an illusion. So you pray to the Mother Kali, Dakshina Kali, that don't ensnare me in the Pravrutti Marga and in her bewitching Maya. Let me take the help of Avidya Maya and go towards Shiva rather than get stuck by Mother Kali. So, and then he says, it's just for 2 or 3 days, people will call you the master. And the people who now call you their boss or master, and because they are dependent on you, the same people, when you die, when the master in the form of death comes, they will not call you the master. So your position or post is temporary. Then he says, will the friends and relatives who you have when you are dying, will they come and accompany you? I mean, they will obviously not accompany you. They'll do their best to save you, but they will not accompany you. This beloved wife of yours will sprinkle Ganges water, as he said, the sooner the body goes away, because they want to purify the place where the dead body was there. So after giving this kind of vairagya, he discusses on certain things that this devotee is planning to do, because he is under the impression, and he's a leader of this, one of the leaders of perhaps Brahmo Samaj or something. So he says, what are you doing as a leader, arbitrator, and such things? So this topic is arbitration, leadership, desire to build hospitals and dispensaries, desire to have fame and learning. All these mark the early stages of life. God realization is only after giving up the pacifier. That means all these things maybe they are part of life. So he says, what are you doing as a leader, arbitrator? He was a legal person, obviously. That's why Sri Ramakrishna used some legal examples. He says, I hear that they select you as an arbitrator to settle disputes and quarrels of other people. You have been doing this for a long time. Let them who care to do it, because he really loves this devotee. He says, you have been doing it for a long time, settling others' disputes, getting involved in so many things. Now you don't. Now give more and more of your mind to God's lotus feet. They said Ravana died in Lanka while Behula wept her heart out. So Behula was unrelated to Ravana and lived many years later. This shows how man gives way to totally irrelevant matters. So Behula is not connected to Ravana, but here by this example, he says Ravana died in Lanka, and while Behula wept her heart out much later. That means you don't have to weep for something which is not yours. Some remotely unconnected incidents, why do you weep for something which does not involve you. That means don't get involved into everything which does not really concern you. The same was said by Shambhu. He said, I will found hospitals and dispensaries. He was a great devotee. So I said to him, will you ask Bhagwan if he appears before you for hospitals and dispensaries? Or will you ask for his vision? Keshav Sen, then this is the last para, and then we'll conclude. Keshav Sen asked me, why can't I see the Lord? I replied, you are so busy with name and fame, scholarship and so on. That's why you don't see him. As long as the infant continues to suck on the pacifier, the mother does not come to him. After a while, when the infant throws away the pacifier and cries aloud, the mother takes down the rice pot from the fire and comes to it. You are engaged in arbitration. The mother says to herself, my son, mother means the divine mother, my son is doing fine as a leader of men. Let him enjoy himself. All this time, Ishan, and this is Ishan Mukherjee actually, has been holding Thakur's feet. That shows that he was really genuinely wanted a solution. But he was involved in too many things. So Thakur is kind enough to tell him, don't give up all these things. He says humbly to him, still holding his feet, it is not that I have been doing this willfully. Means he's just telling Thakur, see, don't blame me. I am not doing this on my own. I am not doing this willfully. Nature or circumstances have forced me to do. So Sri Ramakrishna now will explain why he has to do all this, why he gets involved in all these things. So he says, Sri Ramakrishna says it, I know it is mother's game. All these conversations we can discuss later because time is over. Yeah. So if there's some questions, you can ask. No, you just see the chat. What's the time now? So this conversation, in the meantime, till you type your questions, if at all there are some questions you can ask. So as I said, we are not informing on WhatsApp broadcast groups. We have uploaded, we have given all the details of 3 types of programs under the subject activities on our website. Our website is very simple. All of you know, vedantauk.org. So if you go to the website, in the activities menu, you will find one is special programs or retreats. It's known as retreats. These are special retreats which are held occasionally. And there's another one, regular lectures. So that is the Saturday, Sunday and other lectures if they are held on a regular basis. And finally, we have celebrations. So you all know we have 5 or 6 celebrations, 6 celebrations every year. So they will be the links to those celebrations and all the details, timing and everything will be notified on the website. So some of you found it difficult to log into Zoom. You just have to go to the website, and now we have created a button. There's a Zoom button there. And just in case you are not able to log in, there is a Zoom ID and a password. For some mobiles and some devices, you may need to enter it if you are watching it for the first time. Otherwise, if you just click, if you have already watched the program, any of the programs, and mind you, the link is same. Because I received so many messages, people are asking, why didn't you send the link? We could not attend. Because the links are all same. The Zoom link never changes, nor does the YouTube link change. Our YouTube channel is the same. So you go on YouTube and the link that has been shared on WhatsApp, you can just click on that and live programs will be there at the stipulated time, provided you know the time. To know the time, you have to obviously for retreats and celebrations, you have to keep visiting the website. So please visit the website. And when you click on the button, you should hopefully log in directly if you have logged in once.
There is a statement.
Hmm.
Nivrutti and pravrutti are a hard balance to achieve and work towards it. Nivrutti and pravrutti are hard to balance to achieve the balance.
No, I'm not saying nivrutti. The question is, somebody has asked a question. We spoke what pravrutti is and what nivrutti is. So you said nivrutti and pravrutti are hard to balance. I'm not saying you have to balance nivrutti and pravrutti. Yes, in a way we have to balance them, because the mind is not always in the nivrutti mode. Nivrutti mode means going away from things. The simplest explanation of the word nivrutti is going away from, and pravrutti is going towards. So when we go towards the world, it engages us and makes the mind restless. So when we talk of balance, we have to practice nivrutti because there's too much of pravrutti. So balance is required. Even if it is hard, it is required. You can't say that I am sick and I will not take medicine. If you want to balance or if you want to get cured, you have to take medicine. So nivrutti is a medicine for excessive pravrutti. First thing is reduce the pravrutti that you have. Pravrutti means getting involved. As Thakur told this Ishan Mukherjee, he nicely explained to him that don't get involved. You are settling others' disputes. You have done this for a whole life. Now maybe he is retired or is about to retire. Now you just withdraw. You don't get involved. You don't need. Let others who want a profession, want a job, let them do it. You don't have to indefinitely go on doing it and then come and complain that my mind is not going towards dispassion or nivrutti. I'm not having these qualities. You can't say that. So he very clearly says, Sri Ramakrishna, that pravrutti and nivrutti are two paths. So very often in the same life or in the same one particular day itself, there will be some activities which make you follow the path of pravrutti. And a balance is required, even if it is difficult, to have some nivrutti at the end of the day or even in between to cancel out the effects of pravrutti. Otherwise, we will sink deep and deeper and deeper into that. So that is the idea. Sri Ramakrishna doesn't say pravrutti it is inevitable. One has to, especially is addressing the people who are living in the world. So they can't avoid pravrutti. And he is not even telling that one should avoid pravrutti. Is there any other question?
Should we ignore world trauma news? When the news
Yes. Somebody is asking, should we ignore the trauma? Now that depends on how much of nivrutti you want. As I said, it's a personal matter. Now and then, of course, you need to know what things are going on. You cannot be totally ignorant because we are not yet out of pravrutti. We need to know. If you are leading a totally reclusive life, you don't need to know what is going on in the world if all your needs are met. But if you are going to get involved in some way or the other, then you need to know what is going on around you. And if not in remote areas, but at least in your own areas, or anything that will impact your life. Anything that will impact your life of pravrutti, naturally you have to take care. So ignoring, if it is possible, it is good. If we can ignore, and the more we ignore things which do not concern us, the more we get time for nivrutti. So how much of what to ignore, what to what to get involved in, which are the things that we should get involved in, which are the things we should ignore. It's a personal thing, depending on your profession, depending on your likes and dislikes, depending on the intensity of spiritual desire you have to make spiritual progress. If you want to really make spiritual progress, then Logically speaking, you should have more nivritti.
It feels heartless to ignore.
There is no question. It's heartless. Heartless is the word that we normally use. Then this heartlessness, for example, I'm giving you an example. You will say that it is heartless to ignore certain things which are happening, which would anyway happen whether you wanted it or not. Suppose, are you able to do something? Just feeling sympathy is not going to help. If you can really make a difference and change things in anyone, and if you are really motivated by that, that is why so much of charity and other things are going on in the world, because their heart tells them to do something. You should definitely get involved if you have the capacity to do something. But if you are going to add to the problem, very often people are not curious or not keen to solve the problem. They get involved and become part of the problem than part of the solution. So if you are going to be part of the problem by saying that my heart is paining and I should get involved, and you get involved and create more trouble, then it is better to be heartless. But if by certain compassion or other things, you can make a difference in whatever pain or suffering is there in the world, wherever it may be. It may be in the family. Charity, they say, begins at home. So are we sure that we are not causing pain in our own family? Once we solve that, then we can have time for the society, the neighbors, and the other people around us. Then we can extend it to countries, then we can extend it to the whole world. That is the goal of spiritual life, actually. How to embrace the whole world. But that does not mean one has to follow the path of pravrutti. Pravrutti is totally different. Pravrutti is selfish interest. We gain something from that. That is why we help others. That is not the right attitude. If it helps nivrutti, if by serving others selflessly, you forget the self and you go towards nivrutti, then it is good. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.